Hello students, last time we have explained the definition and the explanation regarding the ecological succession and the primary succession. So, primary succession means the development of the totally new community on the bare land or a completely sterile area where there is no any evidence of or where there is no any previous community present in the particular sterile area, then the succession is called as primary succession. And we have also explained an example of the a rock which is exposed due to the landslide in the mountain, and on the uh, surface of the rock which has exposed as a new exposed surface or the sterile area or the bare land where there is a development of the pioneer species such as lichen, then there is a development of the moss, then grasses, then herbs, then shrubs, and finally there is a development of the large trees on the particular rock. So during this transformation of the a rock, a completely bare rock or the sterile area of the rock in the mountain has been transformed into a well-developed forest community, and all these transformations from the previous simple communities, that is replacement of the lichen to moss, moss to grasses, then herbs, then shrubs, then bushes or small trees, and finally the larger trees. So these are the several transformation taking place on the uh, a rock, and where there is a development of the new community on the completely sterile area or the bare land of the newly exposed rock, and this result into a formation of a new community called as the primary succession. So this transformation from the pioneer community of the lichen to the stable community of the larger trees of the forest called as a climax community or the stable community. So this is an example of the primary succession. So today we'll explain the next type of the ecological succession, that is secondary succession. So when the community development starts on an areas or the sites previously occupied by well-developed communities called as a secondary succession. Means secondary succession means the area or the site where previously there was a particular community. So this particular old community is replaced by the new community. So when community development starts on an areas or the sites or the regions where there was previous communities present, or when the community development starts on an areas or the sites previously occupied by well-developed communities called as secondary succession, means this is not new. The succession or the development of the new community is not totally new, but previously the particular site or the region was occupied by a previous community. So there is a evidence or the presence of previous community or the old community on the particular site. But due to certain circumstance, maybe certain condition, environmental condition, or the event which has transformed the particular old community into a bare land or a site where there won't be any community. So, the secondary succession means when the community development starts on an areas or the sites previously occupied by well-developed communities is called as a secondary succession. In this situation, organic matter and some organisms from the original community or old community will remain. So in this region or in such a site where there was previous community or well developed community present, so in this case there may be the presence of organic matter and some organisms from the old community may remain or will present in the particular site. For example, forest areas burned by the fire or the forest trees, all the forest trees or the entire forest cut by the farmers for the cultivation or abandoned croplands or abandoned or leveled croplands and deep plowed fields and deep plowed fields are the examples of secondary succession. In primary succession, we have explained that where the community develops, where the community may be a climax or the stable community develops on a totally bare land or the sterile area where there is no any previous community present. But in case of secondary succession, the communities develops in the regions or the sites where previously there was a well-developed communities and due to previous well-developed communities which might have destroyed due to certain disasters or due to certain conditions, natural instincts or the events like uh, the uh, the landslide or the earthquake. So there may be floods. So there are several instincts which can lead to the transformation of the communities into a bare land or the sterile area. So in this situation, so when the secondary succession, when the community develops on the area or the sites where previously there was well developed communities, previously where there was well developed communities called as secondary succession, and in this case there may be presence of some organic matter and some organisms of the original community or old community may be there. For example, forest areas burned by the fire or cut by farmers for the cultivation or abandoned or leveled croplands and deep plowed fields are the examples of the secondary succession. So, depending on the moisture contents, the succession may be classified into following types. Depending on the moisture contents, the succession may be divided into the following types such as 1. Hydrac or hydroseer. Hydrac or hydroseer. So the succession when starts in the aquatic environment, hydrac or hydroseer means when the succession, ecological succession, when it starts in the aquatic environment like ponds, lakes, streams, swamps, etc., called as hydrac or the hydroseer. So, when the ecological succession starts in the region or the site where there is a water, where there is a presence of water either in the form of ponds, lakes, streams, swamps, etc., called as hydroseer. So succession when starts in the aquatic environment like ponds, lakes, streams, swamps, etc., called as hydrac or the hydroseer. Then second, mesarc or mesoseer. So the succession when begins in an area where adequate moisture is present called as mesarch or mesosphere. So when the succession begins in an area where there is a adequate moisture is present, called as mesarch or mesosphere. And third one, that is the Girac or xerosphere. The succession, the process of ecological succession, when starts in a dry habitat like deserts, rocks, etc., in which moisture is very scanty, where moisture is very scanty, it is called as Girac or the xerosphere. So, this is about the types of ecological succession on the basis of presence of moisture contents or the amount of moisture contents, and these are the three types of the succession, that is hydrosphere, mesosphere and xerosphere. That is, hydrosphere means succession occurring in the regions or the environment like water bodies such as ponds, lakes, streams, swamps, etc. Then mesosphere, when the succession begins in the region or the area where there is an adequate amount of moisture present. And thirdly, xerosphere means the succession, the process of ecological succession, when it starts in the dry habitats or the deserts or the rocks in which moisture is very scanty or absent, is called as Girac. Then, on the basis of community metabolism, succession is of two types. Ecological succession is of two types on the basis of the community metabolism, such as autotrophic succession. Autotrophic succession, that is dominance of plants. Dominance of plants. So autotrophic succession means when the region where the community is developed, but the major uh, community or the major species of the community are the plants, called as autotrophic succession or the dominance of the plants, means where in the particular community there are large number of the species of the plants which are present. So the community or a ecological succession in the region where the there is a dominance of the plants, means the plant species are more in number. So there are large number of species of the plants present in the particular region or the community, called as autotrophic succession or the dominance of the plants. And heterotrophic succession, in other case, in other regions, means ecological succession or in the regions or the sites or the communities where there are large number of animals, bacteria, fungi are present, called as heterotrophic succession. So on the basis of community metabolism, there are two types of succession, that is autotrophic succession or heterotrophic succession. In autotrophic succession, the community has large number of plant species or the plant communities. And in case of heterotrophic succession, there are large number of species, large number of species of the animals, including bacteria and fungi, called as heterotrophic succession. Then we'll explain the process of succession. So how or what are the steps? What are the steps of the process of ecological succession, or how the process of succession begins and ends at the end of development of the climax or the stable community. So the process of succession, following sequential steps involved in the process of succession. So first step of ecological succession is the nudation. 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 The process starts with the formation of a bare area or a bare land or the sterile area, or the nudation by several causes or several envir- environmental instincts or the events such as flooding, erosion, volcanic eruption, fire, etc. So these are the some of the natural instincts or natural activities which can cause the nudation. Nudation means the destruction of total destruction of previous communities. Nudation means a total destruction of previous communities or the old communities and resulting into the formation of bare area or the bare land or the sterile area called as nudation. So the process starts with the formation of a bare area or bare land or the nudation, and this happens due to several natural events or the activities such as flooding, erosion, volcanic eruption, fire, etc. And there are many new lifeless areas are created or formed by the man. There are many new lifeless areas are created by the man. For example, stone quarrying for the constructions, stone quarrying for the construction. So for the purpose of construction, the areas of the land which are used so as to obtain the stones for the construction purpose. Then walls, burning, digging, then flooding large land areas under the dams. Means the there are many new lifeless areas which are created by the man, such as stone quarrying for the constructions, or the walls, or the burning of the land, or the digging of the land, or flooding of the large area, flooding of large land areas under the dams. That is the construction of the dams for the various purposes for the requirement of the waters. So nudation means the process of formation of bare area or a sterile area or the nudation by the several causes such as flooding, erosion, volcanic eruption, fires, etc. And there are many new lifeless areas which are also created by the man, such as stone quarrying for the construction, walls, then burning, digging, flooding large land areas under the dams, etc. And this will lead to the formation of the open area or the open land, lifeless Lifeless areas. Lifeless areas are the open lands free from the communities or the free from plants and animals. So no any plant or animal community will remain there due to different reasons. Different regions due to the different reasons there is a nudation and there is a formation of bare area or the sterile area or the lifeless regions or the area which are created on the land surface either by the natural activities or by the man himself. That is called as nudation. Nudation means formation of a bare land or the sterile areas or the sites or the regions where there is no any biotic community remain called as nudation. Then these are the diagrams. So first figure showing the secondary succession in the forest. So in the forest, this is an example of the secondary succession in the forest. Means whatever the forest community or the old community present previously that has cut totally by the farmers or the human for the any other purpose or all the trees which might have cut all the trees of the forest which might have cut from the forest and resulting into a bare land or the bare area of the forest. So after a certain time what happens due to presence of certain organic material or the seeds or the certain organisms in the bare area of the forest which bare area of the forest or the region of the forest where now it is a bare area but it may contain certain seeds or the certain organisms or the certain organic material in the bare land of the forest. So over a period of time, what happens? There is a development. There is a development of the seeds or the remains of the organisms into a new community. So there is again slow development or development of the pioneer plant species, then again grasses, then pioneer species like lichens, then mosses, then herbs, or grasses, then herbs, then shrubs, then small trees, and again the large trees, and again over a long period of the time, again the forest community, new forest community can be developed with a stable species or the stable community or the climax or stable communities of the plants, that is the larger trees or even the animals will develop or will appear in the particular region called as secondary succession in the forest. So the forest region which has been transformed into a bare land or the bare area or the sterile area, but over a long period of the time there is a development of the again new forest community through a gradual changes or the advancement and the replacement of the plant and animal species, and finally develops into a climax community possessing a large number of tree species or the animal species called as a stable or a climax community. Then in another figure, which is also showing the ecological succession, that is the transformation of the pond community into a forest community. So this is again a replacement or the transformation of the pond community, that is aquatic community, to the forest community, that is a terrestrial community over a long period of the time. So in this case what happens, the pond which is without any living organism at first, that will be transformed. So due to the slow passage of the silt or the soil material from the side into a pond, so slowly this uh, deeper pond will become a shallow pond. Again, there is a growth of certain plants or the submerged plants which are then grows, and slowly the particular pond will be replaced by the marshy place, then wetland or a grassland, and finally into the forest. So these are the figures from 1 to 4, figures 1 to 4, showing the transformation of the pond community into the forest community. So in the first figure, we can see there is a deep pond having a fish and without any plants. So this particular pond will be replaced by the some sort of shallow pond, and this shallow pond will become due to the filling up of the silt or the mud or the soil material which is having the submerged vegetation of the plants present in the or which will develop in the base or the bottom of the pond. So in the first figure we can see there is just a presence of fish, but in a figure we can see there are the submerged vegetation which has been developed in a pond. Then after certain period, again these plants or the submerged plants which will get exposed to the surface, and this happens due to the filling up of the deeper pond by the silt or mud or the soil material, and this will become a shallow pond. So ultimately there is a development of the submerged weeds into a plants which can expose to the surface of water, and slowly there is a transformation of the a permanent pond to the temporary pond. So previously in the pond there may be a water remain for the a complete period of the year, but in second or third step we can see the pond become temporary. So during only the certain period of year there is a water in the pond. So this is due to the decrease in a depth. This is due to the decrease of depth of the pond. So due to decreased depth of the pond, slowly the pond which was uh, persistent or the permanent previously will become temporary pond, and due to the filling up of the soil material or the mud or the silt into the pond, slowly it will be completely filled up with a soil material or the mud material, and this is been transformed into a marshy place, then become a grassland, and finally it will become transformed into a forest community or the larger trees called as a climax stage. Means this is the figure showing the ecological succession, that is a transformation of pond community into a forest community through the ecological succession. Means over a long period of the time there is a continuous replacement and the advancement or the changes taking place in the biotic community of the pond and also its physical environment or the structural components of the pond. So structural components of the pond also get transformed, and over the long period of the time there is a transformation and the replacement of the biotic community also, that is plants and animal species that are also changed into the pond, and finally there is a complete transformation of the permanent pond to the temporary pond, then become a marshy place, then become a wetland or then grassland, and slowly it has become transformed into a forest community, which is a stable or the climax community. So these are the figures showing, the first figure shows the secondary succession in the forest. So forest which has cut totally, which will again develop into a new forest community over a long period of the time, that is called as secondary succession. But in another figure where we can see there is a complete transformation of the aquatic community to the terrestrial community or pond community to the forest community. So this shows a gradual transformation and the replacement in the biotic community and also the physical or abiotic factors of the pond community resulting into a forest community. So this is the figure showing the ecological succession, that is a transformation of the pond community into the forest community. So this is about the figures. So already we have explained the first stage of the succession, that is nudation. Then second stage is the invasion. So it involves the arrival and the settlement or the transportation or the migration of the various organisms or the seeds on the bare area or the bare land. So bare land, which can be a totally new site or the region, or maybe a region where there was a previous or old community may present. So bare land or the bare area can be formed totally new or may have a previous community. So due to certain natural instincts or the activities of the man, the previous land or the previous community might have transformed into a bare land or the bare area or a site where there is no any life or any community present. So after the nudation means the formation of bare area or the lifeless area or the region or the site where there may be a previous community or there may not be a previous community present. That is called as nudation. Then secondly, invasion. So it involves the arrival and the settlement of various organisms on the bare area or the new site where there is no any evidence or the presence of the previous community or the life. The plants are the first invaders. The plants are the first invaders, hence are called as pioneers in this area. So, at first, during invasion or while the invasion of the pioneer species or the organisms, may be plants or animals or the microorganisms, when reaching into the bare area or a lifeless sites called as invasion. So, the plants are the first invaders, hence called as pioneers in this area. So, the seeds, spores reach on the bare area through the water or can be carried by the animals into the bare areas. This is called as dispersal or the migration. So, due to the dispersal or the migration of the animals, or maybe due to the wind or the water or by the animals, the seeds or the spores of the plants can be carried or transported or invaded into the bare land or the bare area called as dispersal or the migration. When these new migratory species, when these new migratory species establish on the new area by the germination and start reproduction. So whatever the seeds and the spores which are migrating or carried in the bare land or in the bare areas from certain other sites or from the certain other communities, either by the animals or the wind or by water, whatever the seeds and spores which are carried or transported or migrating from certain other community into a bare area, which will then germinate, the spores or the seeds of the plant species will germinate and reproduce in the bare land or the new area and through the process of germination of the seeds or the spores and starting its growth and development or the reproduction and starts its reproduction. This is called as eisesys. So the process of transportation or the dispersal of the spores or the seeds of the different plants from other sites or the communities into a bare land or the bare area where the seeds or the spores germinates, grows into new plants, then getting mature and undergoing its process of reproduction or starts its reproduction is called as eisesys. So this is the first step of the invasion. After nudation, there is an invasion. That is, seeds or the spores or the eggs, might be the eggs of the smaller animals or the smaller organisms. There might be a transportation or the dispersal or migration of the eggs, seeds or spores of the plants and animals or the fungi can be migrating from another communities or the sites into a bare area where the seeds or the spores they germinate, develops into new plants and starts their reproduction is called as eisesys. Very few species can establish in a new and hard environment and remaining disappear. So in the initial phase, during the initial phase of the invasion, whatever the new species develops during the process of eisesys, no all the species will get sustained or survive. So few species of which can sustain or can establish or can tolerate the hard environment or the new environment of the bare area or the bare land and remaining disappear. So very few species of the very few new species which has developed in the bare land will sustain or survive and most of the species will get disappear or get killed or get dead. So very few species can establish in the new and hard environment and remaining disappears or get destroyed or get killed. The successful immigrants establish. The successful immigrants establish, propagate, and increase its number, forming a large population in the area called as aggregation. So this is the final stage of the invasion. So in invasion, what happens? Invasion, we'll repeat the same things again. Invasion, what is invasion? So invasion means the uh, in the bare land or in the bare area, some uh, plant seeds or the spores that will migrate or disperse from other sites or the other communities into the bare area. So the plants are the first invaders. So during invasion, the pioneer species or the pioneer plants will appear first. Pioneer plants or the pioneer species appears first, and this happens due to the migration or the transportation of the seeds and spores of the certain plants along with the water or by the animals can be carried from certain other sites or the communities into the bare land or bare area as a pioneer species. So the seeds or the spores of these pioneer plants get germinated, then will grow, mature, and start their reproduction is called as ascesis. So whatever the pioneer species of the plants appears first in the bare land, out of which few species get sustained or tolerate and resist the hard environment or the new environment of the bare area or the new site. So, very few species can establish in the new and hard environment and remaining disappear. So, whatever the pioneer species of the plants which has appeared first, among which few get sustained or survive and remaining disappears. The successful immigrants establish, propagate, and increase its number, forming a large population in the area called as aggregation. So, in the next phase, what happens? Whatever the species of the plant or the pioneer species of the plant which are uh, tolerant or the best with the best resistance, they can establish. So successful immigrants or the species which has migrated from other sites to the into the bare land or into the new area where they can successfully sustain or survive, then grow, establish and propagate or the reproduce and even increasing their number or the population in the area is called as aggregation. So this is the final stage of the invasion. So after invasion, there is aggregation also. Means after invasion, certain species of the plants or the animals or the organisms or the newcomers or the fresh species of the plants or animals which has been established in the bare land or in the new site or the hard environment. So successful species of which will survive, which will then grow, establish, then mature and propagate and increasing their number and forming its large population or the number in the area called as aggregation. So this is the final stage of the invasion. So the first stage of the ecological succession is nudation, then second is invasion, then third competition and reactions. Competition and the reactions. So in limited area, the number of species of the individuals increase due to reproduction multiplication, which ultimately results into the competition for the food and space. So during invasion, that is ascesis, and followed by the aggregation. So during ascesis, what happens? The pioneer species of the plants or the organisms which will migrate, germinate or develops and undergoes its reproduction called as ascesis, and very few species of which will get survive and which are having less resistance, that will disappear. So few species can establish in the new site or in the hard environment and remaining disappears. And the successful, whatever the successful species of the pioneer plants or the pioneer species or the species which has uh, uh, come certain after certain time. So successful species or the immigrants, they will survive, they establish, they propagate, and increasing their number in the particular area called as aggregation. So due to the aggregation, so whenever there is increase in the population, whenever there is increase in the population of certain species, ultimately they will undergo the competition. So there will be a competition. So in the new area or in the new community or in the new habitat, after the invasion, there may be increase in a number of certain species. There may be increase in number of individuals or the increase in a population of certain species, and this will ultimately result into a competition for the purpose of reproduction, multiplication, and also for the food and space. So these are the some of the requirements, some of the important requirements of the organisms, and thus there may be a competition for the food and space. So in limited area, the number of species or the individuals increase due to reproduction and the multiplication, and which ultimately results into a competition for the food and space. This competition is of two types, namely intraspecific competition, in which competition is between the animals of the same species, or the competition may be interspecific, that is the competition between the individuals of the different species. So competition of the individuals may be intraspecific or interspecific. So the competition may be for food or space, and this might be due to the increased number of species of the plant or animal community in the respective habitat or in the new habitat, and also their number. So number of species will also increase, and the population of each species in the new community will also increase, and this will ultimately lead into a competition. Competition may be interspecific or intraspecific for the purpose of food and the space. The individuals interact with each other as well as with the environment. So whatever the increased number of individuals in the particular area will will interact among themselves. So the individuals interact with each other as well as with the environment, and due to the interactions, the individuals modify the environment. Due to the interactions, the individuals modify the environment, and due to this, the uh, whatever the existing community, this will become unsuitable. So the individuals interact with each other as well as with the environment, and due to these interactions, the individuals modify the environment, and it become unsuitable for its for the existence of the community. So due to the interactions of the individuals modify the environment. So ultimately the environment or the region of the particular community get modified due to the interaction of the environment among interaction of the individuals with the environment, and also the interaction among themselves will result into the modification of the environment, and this become unsuitable for the existing community. In the course of time, they are replaced by another community members and who find this environment more suitable. So ultimately, during the process of the development or the ecological succession, at the end, or once the certain species of the animals or the plants has been developed in the new site, ultimately there is an interaction between the different species of plants or animals among themselves. That the interaction may be interspecific or intraspecific, and this will lead to the competition. And due to the competition, what happens? The certain strong species get survive. and the species which are weak will disappear, or otherwise they can move away from the particular site. So the invaders, the new species or the new invaders can also reach into the community, and this will replace the previous communities. So new organisms, whatever the new organisms which are entering into the particular community, that will compete or that will fight against the previous communities or the organisms, and these new invaders which are competing with the previous communities, and ultimately they are eliminated. So the previous communities may eliminate, and the new communities may get added or invaded in the respective site. So these new invaders compete with the previous occupants, and ultimately they are eliminated or brought to subordinate level, or they are otherwise they can migrate, or they can get killed, or they can migrate, or they can brought to the subdominant level. The small plants enrich the environment for larger plants or the trees. The smaller plants enrich the environment. The smaller plants enrich the environment for the larger plants or the trees by the organic matter, moisture, and the nutrients. The animal community also develops in the area because of availability of the food. So, in the course of time, they are replaced. So, whatever the community or whatever the plant and animal species which has been developed newly in the particular habitat will also show their interaction, that is a computation interaction, or this might be due to their increased number in a limited area, and certainly they will compete for the food and space. Then in the course of time they may be replaced by the another community members who find this environment more stable. So there may be uh, introduction or the entry of the new species in the respective site. So these new invaders again compete with the previous occupants or the communities, and ultimately they are eliminated or brought to the subdominant level. Then the small plants enrich the environment for the larger plants or the trees by the organic matter, moisture, and the nutrients. So ultimately the smaller plants can enrich the environment so as to satisfy the requirement of the larger trees. Again, due to the development of the larger trees or the plant community, the animal community also develops in the area because of availability of the food. So this is called as computation reactions. Again, these interactions among the individuals further modify the environment and allow to invade another species of the plants and animals, which move the process of succession. Means the process of succession always remain continue. So the process of interaction among the individuals, again modifying the environment, again the modified environment will become suitable to the certain other species. So this is the process which will again allow the invasion of another species of the plants and animals, and this will lead to the most stable community. This will lead to the replacement of the transformation towards the establishment of the development of the community towards the more and more successful or the complex or the stable type. So again interactions among the individuals further modify the environment and allowing the invasion of another species of the plants and animals which move the process of succession. So this will lead to the transformation of the previous simple to complex or the stable or the climax type of transformation in the community. Then last stage, that is stabilization or the climax. So first one was nudation, then invasion, then computation reaction, and fourth step of the ecological succession, that is stabilization or the climax. stabilization or climax. So the final terminal community becomes permanently stable in the area which is mature and self-maintaining and self-reproducing. And this community is tolerant to the environmental condition and it shows equilibrium as well as species diversity. This dominant and stable community is called as climax community. This dominant and stable community is called as climax community. So, stabilization or a climax. So, at the end of the community development, at the end of community development, the the final terminal communities are the plants or animals which has entered or developed at the end of the community development which will become a permanently stable in the area. So final terminal communities become permanently stable in the area which is mature and self-maintaining and self-reproducing. So this community is tolerant. So whatever the community of the plant or animal or the organisms, that is plant, the final or the terminal community representing the final species or the communities of the plants and animals which appears last, which will become permanent or the stable in the area, and which is mature and self-maintaining or self-reproducing. And this community, that is the final species, whatever the number of the species of the plants, animals, or the microorganisms which are occurring or appearing in the community at the end become permanent or stable in the area and are this community is tolerant to the environmental conditions and shows the equilibrium as well as species diversity. So at the end of climax or at the stage of the final ecological succession or the stabilization or the climax, whatever the species of the plants and animals exist or appears, they are self-sustaining or self-reproducing or permanent or the stable or the tolerant to the environmental condition, and it shows the equilibrium as well as species diversity. And this dominant and the stable community is called as climax community. So this is what about the steps of the process of ecological succession. So this is about the ecological succession. So already we have explained the uh, ecological succession with respect to its definition, then characteristics of the ecological succession together with the types of succession, that is primary succession, then secondary succession, then stages of the secondary succession, that is first one nudation, second invasion, third competition reactions, then fourth one the climax or the stabilization. So these are the several various steps, four steps of the secondary ecological succession, and we have also explained the diagrams showing the primary succession, secondary succession, and the ecological succession with respect to the transformation of the pond community to the forest community. So this is what about the ecological succession. Next time we'll continue with the last topic, fifth topic, that is animal interactions. So before this, before end, this is the exercise given below the fourth topic, that is community. So you can observe all the lecture videos and can solve these questions or do this exercise at home in a separate notebook so that you can get the clear understanding or idea about the contents in the chapter, that is community. So next time we'll continue with last chapter or topic, that is animal interactions. So till then, bye. Thank you.